Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, Redditors who drove overnight or long distance, what's the creepiest or paranormal thing you've seen? The black dog is definitely a real phenomenon. It's not at all supernatural. Stay up driving long enough, and you'll start seeing shadows in the road, often looks vaguely like a black dog, hence the name, flickering into the road, causing people to swerve to avoid something that isn't there. Don't drive tired. I was driving across the country one night. I was in one of the Carolinas and was debating if I should keep driving. I wasn't tired, but I saw a few deer on the side of the highway and decided it would be safest to sleep for the night at a hotel. The next morning, there were so many dead deer on the road, it was literally red for a few miles. Dead deer everywhere. Don't drive at night through wooded highways if you can avoid it. Early morning hours driving through Virginia. Was passing through big patches of fog. Came out of one patch and saw the road covered in what I thought was blood, but the next patch of fog hit within a second, so I barely had time to process. I was all alone and had been driving for 10 hours or so. Definitely freaked me out a bit. Was riding a motorcycle south of Alice Springs towards the South Australian border at about 0200 during winter. It was a clear moonless night. Every now and again I'd stop to warm my hands on the engine. The first time, I turned the engine off, and was shocked by the darkness. You could tell the horizon by where the stars stopped. But other than that, no light. I might have been the last living organism on Earth. After that, I left the engine and lights on when I stopped. I was driving home from San Jose to San Francisco late at night several years ago. I was dead tired but wanted to sleep in my own bed that night. I was falling asleep and was behind an SUV with the spare tire on the back, a Zuzu, perhaps. Anyway, my eyes are getting heavy and I'm on Highway 101 trying to stay awake when I see a figure in white hanging from the spare tire of the car in front of me. I slightly freak out and force myself awake. I look again and see nothing but the spare tire. At that point I figure I really should just pull over and take a nap, which I did. This other time I'm heading to Lakeport, which is about a couple hours north of San Francisco. There's a stretch of road going over a mountain where the road is really narrow. There's a few spots where you can park your car in case of emergency. It was really late at night and I'm driving by one of those spots where a car is parked. The dome light is on in this car and I can see someone in the driver's side. I'm looking and this youngish woman with a freakishly weird smile is just staring at me as I drive past. It still gives me goosebumps now as I type this. The weirder thing is a couple of days later I'm on the same road heading back from Lakeport and I see the same car still parked there. Makes me wonder who that person was. My grandfather used to travel across Turkey to get to his family. The entire road took about 40 hours and most of these hours were spent on deserted roads at night. He told me 2 stories. Driving very late at night on a remote country road. Suddenly a red car crosses my path appearing from the trees, and going through the thick bamboo on the other side of the road. I stop and check, it's impossible. No road and the trees and bamboos are all intact. No car or anything else. When all the hairs in my body starts to rise, I hurriedly left. My girlfriend saw it too, and we cannot believe it's true. Me and my sister drove from Oslo to Bergen, Norway, and between those cities there is a big snowy mountain valley you have to pass called Haukelifjellet. And it's filled with small cozy restaurants built inside 1800s stores and cabins that were renovated. I asked my sister if she is up for some waffles as we haven't eaten dinner yet. Pull up to this restaurant and put in our orders. The restaurant was almost empty except for a few old pensioners and a German tourist couple. I have to pee really bad, so I go down into the cellar, which was where the bathroom was. Just as I come down the stairs I see this old man walk into the bathroom, so I wait outside the door. 5 minutes passes and I'm thinking he's taking a fat shit. 10 minutes and I literally hear no sound coming from there, so I knock on the door to let him know I'm waiting to use the bathroom outside. I don't get any response, so I pull back and stand near the stairs while scrolling on my phone. After standing there a bit, a man comes down the stairs as well to use the bathroom and just walks straight into the bathroom where the old guy previously went into. Before I could tell him it's occupied, I noticed that there was literally no one using the bathroom that he went into, and it was unlocked. I was so freaked out I went back up to my sister and we brought our waffles into the car and had a good laugh about it. I ended up pissing on the side of the road a few kilometers ahead. I still think about it from time to time. My sister visited our parents in around '82, she lived in Toronto. I wasn't born yet. Our parents live in a rural area, and one of the areas you have to drive through was at the time a heavily wooded area. Still is, just less so. So my sister left around 9 p.m., drives through the area, and gets beyond it, then her car breaks down, thankfully in front of a family friend's house. She calls Dad, he comes get her. As they're driving back to the house, it's about 10 p.m. or so, and they're just chatting and listening to the radio when they heard an incredibly loud scream, louder than the engine, than the radio, than them talking. Dad slams on the brakes, and they're like, WTF was that? When all of a sudden a coyote or something walks in front of the car, on two legs, and this thing is like 6 or 7 feet tall. It also had an unusual tail that was a black and white stripe. It walked in front of the car, into the trees on the other side, then they heard the scream again and Dad got the FCK out of there. He never saw anything like it again. In Germany, I was driving back to base one night after leaving a hotel. I decided to take a back road, instead of jumping on the highway directly. I was cruising through this little town and the speed limit was about 30 kilometers per hour. I slowed down and as I approached a church, something caught my eye on one of the pirouettes. As I looked at it, this thing jumped off the pirouette onto the sidewalk, looked my way and ran across the street. It ran on two legs, but was hunched over and low to the ground. As it got to the street, it lapped up onto the 15-foot wall of the cemetery that was across the street. Then, it looked my way again. I hit the gas and didn't look in my rear view the entire way home. I ran upstairs and jumped into bed and pulled the covers over me. I told a buddy about what I saw, and we decided to drive down there that weekend. We got to town and arrived just as church was letting out. We stood there and I was pointing out to my buddy where it happened when one of the priests approached us and asked us if we needed help. We reluctantly explained why we were there and he simply said, "Oh, you have seen it. If you are here now, it meant you know ill will." We asked what it was, and he told us that they don't talk about it. As we started to leave, two older ladies approached us and told us to be careful on what we look for, because we might find it, or it might find us. Driving on the highway at 2 a.m. through heavy fog with deer on the side of the road looking like they're about to run in front of me. I'm trying to think back, and I've never really seen anything creepy or paranormal that I can remember. I mostly stick to interstates and the back roads are where the creepy things usually happen. There were a few scary experiences though. One time I was driving through the night. I'd never driven in heavy traffic like I had seen in Indianapolis, and out of nowhere there was this downpour, I mean a real deluge. I couldn't see the semi 3 feet in front of me, cars were whipping past me doing highway speeds and I'm just sitting here white-knuckling the steering wheel, trying not to hydroplane or deviate from my lane even an inch in this f***ing typhoon. Eventually of course I got through it, but man, that was a rough leg of that trip. Another thing, I spent 2020 as an Uber driver in Oklahoma City. I've had a few would-be pickups that gave me real creepy vibes. Pickups in the middle of the night off dirt roads surrounded by trees with no houses to speak of. I noped the FCK out of those locations pretty quick. Wasn't even driving that far. But on a rural highway on the way back to my college town in the middle of the night, maybe 3 a.m. or so, I was with my friend. This is rural western Oklahoma, fairly flat. A deer or something on the side of the road or even crossing it at night isn't anything unusual. Dark as hell. No street lights or anything, just the occasional reflector, but this wasn't a deer. It looked like a mountain lion, but it walked like a deer, and it didn't have a head. Normally animals' eyes are reflective in headlights, but there were no eyes. It walked across the road about 50 feet in front of my car, passed through my headlights, and turned and walked back in the same direction. I thought I was hallucinating from sleep deprivation, but then my friend said what the FCK was that and where was its head. There aren't enough mountain lions/bobcats in the area for me to seriously consider that could be what it was. But I don't know what else it could be, but it didn't have a head. Nothing paranormal about this, and I'm sure people who live in countries with lots of roads and not so many cars would think so, what the heck. But about 30 years ago I was driving around 2 a.m. up the A1 in England and got to a bit where it was just totally dark. No other cars, no street lights or town/village lights visible, just me, the road, and my own headlights for company. Only lasted about a mile but was the eeriest experience I've had driving, and I still wonder how I'd have coped if I'd broken down at that exact moment. I only did a 24-hour drive once, and it was stupid to do so. I acknowledge that and apologize for it. My stimulants were legal, Monster and beef jerky. The day driving was fine. Colorado is a lovely state to drive through, or was, may have gone to shit. New Mexico? New Mexico gave me the creeps, the one time I felt unsafe. I had been stopping at major gas stations to fill up, but around 11:30, I was running low, and there was only one station in the town. I pulled up to the pump, stopped the truck, and got out. It was damn near pitch black. At first I thought the lights had burned out, but then I noticed the only light at this station were the sign and the big stupid Chevron tower. I looked over at the station and it was completely dark. Not even the coolers in the convenience mart were lit. The hair rose on my neck, and I got the strong impulse to get the FCK out of there. It felt like those lit signs were a lure, so I punched a couple more miles looking at the gas gauge becoming more alarming, but I found an uncreepy gas station to fill up at. I'm mostly a city dude, so I'm used to places being alive. Lot of dead space between CO and CA, it's likely nothing FCKY was going on at that station, but I'll probably remember that feeling for a long time. I'll never do another long drive alone. I had done it out of necessity, but I wouldn't do it again. Driving through Show Low at 1 a.m. in Arizona is the eeriest experience I've ever had. It was an overcast night and there were no lights anywhere for miles, not even the high beams helped. We had to slow down to 15 miles per hour because we couldn't see the stretch of road just a few feet out from the car. It was exactly like that episode of SpongeBob when he gets stranded in rock bottom. While I was in the Marine Corps, I was duty driver for my battalion. It's essentially a 24-hour shift where I drive around base to stop at different companies. Normally you get at least 4 hours of sleep, however, our duty OIC was some DCK headquo and never let me go on my sleeping post, so myself and the staff sergeant that I'm on duty with go on a rove around 3 a.m., almost 20 hours into the shift and I'm exhausted. There we are driving down an empty, foggy road. If you know Camp Pendleton, that BTCH gets foggy in the middle of the night, when out of nowhere something runs across the road, scaring the SHT out of me. I brake really hard thinking it might have been a coyote or whatever, but it was way too big to be a coyote. I look at the staff sergeant and he's looking at me as if he didn't see whatever just passed us. We head back to the battalion building and he's acting weird around me, so for the rest of the duty I wonder if something actually crossed the street, paranormal or not. Or did I imagine something there? We were driving from a ferry port in Scotland to the Midlands of England, which is roughly 300 miles. After about 100 miles, we took a toilet break at Gretna Green. This is a village with lots of history and now many touristy shops. We had our break and were planning to restart the journey when our car wouldn't start. My partner is not mechanical and rang the RAC, our countrywide recovery services. It was about 2 hours before they turned up and the mechanic worked on the car for ages and couldn't find the problem. He was just about to arrange for a towing truck to take us home, which is part of the arrangement with the recovery service. He said he would have one last go before calling them. The car fired up. 4 hours after we were intending to carry on a journey that was motorway driving all the way home. Part of this motorway was notorious for accidents and I firmly believe that the car wasn't working for a reason. Back in Afghanistan I was lead gunner on an MRAP convoy from Kandahar airfield to Kandahar city for some night mission to pick up someone after a late meeting. Rather than taking the main road straight into the city we turned off on this one side road that skirted the outside of the city to another main road. It was a clear night where we were but with my night vision goggles I could see some flashes way off in the far distance on the horizon. They weren't visible to the naked eye in the dark. It turned out it was lightning 30+ miles away in the far mountains. I was driving back the day lockdown was starting. It was a 15-hour drive. At one point I had to drive past NYC. Easily the creepiest thing was it being pitch black out and we saw signs simply talking out the virus and to avoid the city. There was nobody on the road around me. It was so unsettling. Drove 13 hours straight, At about 11 hours the patterns in the nighttime fog were pretty mesmerizing, so that I found it difficult to pay attention to the road. Not really paranormal but def superstitious, and odd, so I figured I'd mention it. Also didn't happen to me, but it's such an event for my cousin that I feel like it's part of my life now. Anyways, if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.